It occupies almost every waking minute of my day, the idea that Tottenham Hotspur could be relegated.
Only one place to start that is by talking about the mighty Tottenham Hotspur, Flav. So let's start. There's a lot to dissect. We're going to start by talking about Thomas Frank, because we did hear the news this week that after Spurs' loss to Newcastle, Tottenham have sacked Thomas Frank, as we know. So let's have a reminder of how he got on. So this is his form at Tottenham for this season, of course. So played 26, 7 wins, 8 draws, 11 losses. That's 1.12 points per game. Importantly, that is a win percentage of 26.9%. Now, we can see how that stacks up against former Tottenham managers. So we're looking at... This is the win percentage by Spurs managers in the Premier League that have managed, I should say, more than 5 Premier League games. As you can see, Thomas Frank, unfortunately, with the lowest win percentage of any manager that Spurs have had in the Premier League. So, Flav, let's come to you as the Spurs fan first. What was your initial reaction when you heard the news?
It was the right decision. Probably should have happened before. I like Thomas Frank. He's a nice person. I don't think anyone who's met him in football would disagree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And from afar, as a fan, you respect him, especially with the stuff he's done for Brentford. But I think it became clear that the job was too big for him. I think he wasn't commanding enough in the dressing room. And I think generally the players, I'm not sure if this is true, but I don't think they respected him in the way that they should have done. I think the players are culpable in this season's failures as much as his tactics have led him down this path as well. You know, this kind of disrespect showed to him by certain members of our squad. It was apologised for, there was a misunderstanding, but it was too much to suggest that he had any command of that dressing room. And when you lose a dressing room, and that's a horrible cliche, but when the manager clearly has lost the players, it's over, it's done. My major misgiving this season was when we played Arsenal. We went to the Emirates. We had no right to go there and say we were going to beat them. The confidence was pretty low at that point. But he set up with 5 at the back with 2 screening midfielders. You can't do that in a North London derby. It's disrespectful to the occasion. And we got beat 4-1 anyway. So go out and give it a go. It was embarrassing. And from that point, there was a shift in opinion towards him. And like I say, there's nothing about him as a decent human being and a good man in football, but you have to be more than a good tactician when you're managing Spurs, because the level of scrutiny is through the roof. He didn't handle the press room very well, consistently giving credit to the opposition. And if you believe people like Matt Law, who's journalist for, I think it's the Telegraph, he was consistently using Arsenal as a reference point inside Tottenham Hotspur, which again is not acceptable. You can't. There's ways of speaking and an etiquette which meant that he was doomed from the start. So, nice guy, but yeah, good riddance.
I think it's worth talking a little bit about the situation around Thomas Frank as well, because obviously there are some caveats. I know a lot of Tottenham fans weren't happy with the business that we saw in the January window, coming in and supporting an injured squad, or, of course, in the summer. So we can have a look at Thomas Frank's signings at the club in his tenure. Not a great deal there. Nieve, as you look at that list from Mo Kudus all the way down to most recently James Wilson on loan from Hearts, what do you make of it?
I think what sticks out to me is... I would say, is perhaps there's lots of players there where there's still work to be done to bring out the talent in them, if you get me. So, and I think that's something in the last few years I've noticed with Spurs. I don't think it's indicative of just Thomas Frank, in that it's whether or not they've signed prospects or young players when maybe they could have signed an experienced player, or they've maybe signed players where there's still perhaps question marks are they good enough actually for that level, so you've still got to get something out of them. So I do think they give themselves and the manager that little bit extra work to do, where maybe they could go out, if they're going to spend that level of money anyway on a player, can they not perhaps get someone who's going to help the manager a little bit?
You saw Postecoglou's...
I was just about to say, Ange alluded to something similar in the overlap.
Yeah, we had the opportunity. He wanted to bring in players like Neto, players like...
Bumo, he said.
Semenyo, he said.
And he also mentioned Mark Gay, right?
Yeah.
Those 4 players make you a title-challenging team, what we had there. but we chose not to do that. We brought in Solanke and Berival and
Solanke's been great. Great signing.
Yeah, no issue with it. But there were prospect signings that, as you say, Nieve, needed so much work to do. What you've got to also remember about Frank's situation is the turmoil behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Daniel Levy was removed from his position. There has been massive change in bringing backroom staff in. I don't even mean like trainers or coaches and stuff. We're talking about people that run the football club. The massive issues there. We appointed 2 sporting directors in Langer and Paratici, which effectively means you don't have a director of football. You've got 2 people making decisions about the direction of a football club. It's never going to end well. So Paratici has left. He was here 3 months, and now he's gone to Fiorentina. Although he was definitely involved in the appointment of Igor Tudor.
We're going to talk about the appointment very soon, actually. The other thing we want to mention is the injury list, because we've seen this do the rounds on social media, and a lot of people saying this has been a contributing factor. So this is Tottenham, just to clarify, current injuries. There's 11 players currently unavailable to injury. Add Romero's current suspension. You had Xavi that had Xavi Simons had a 3-game ban earlier on the season. Sarr went the entire way in AFCON. We've also had long injuries to Dominic Solanke, who missed a huge part of the season. So there have been periods where Spurs have been without 14 players, and that's evident when you look at the substitutes bench. When you look at this, and this is again the second year in a row that we're talking about double figures in terms of injuries, how much of a factor has this been this season? Where do you put it down to the tactical aspect or the fact that there's been injuries?
No, I don't think any manager would have been successul with the number of injuries that we've had, for sure.
There's a lot of starting players on that list as well.
You could argue that that's a better starting 11 than we've got available. Barring the fact there's no keeper is obviously a point. But yeah, no, it's massive, and you have to be sympathetic to Frank. You have to ask questions about our injury. Our medical department, why do these injuries keep coming? We've had 4 ACL injuries in the last 2 years. The average across the Premier League is around 10 a season. So something's going on there. Postecoglou talked about the problems in our medical department. There was a complete upheaval in that. They brought in a new team. They brought in someone to placate Frank recently as well. So there's a lot going on. No manager can circumnavigate the problems caused by having that many injuries to first-team players.
You mentioned the gaffer then. I want to get both your thoughts then, Nieve, actually, because obviously you watch a lot of Italian football as well. Igor Tudor announces the new interim coach until June 2026. No permanent option, so we know that it is just an interim. What are your thoughts on that appointment? Because I think it surprised a few people. It's sort of split opinion on socials. Where do you stand on it?
Yeah, I must admit I was very confused by it, because of the list of people you'd expect, I was not expecting that name to pop up. But I almost wonder if, in Tottenham's mind, the candidates that they're looking at won't be available until the summer.
Yeah.
And this was someone who, if I'm honest with you, I think Tudor could really do with making his worth a bit higher again. And I think he'll see an opportunity as an interim to, when he comes into a team, when he came into Juventus, there was an injection of energy at the beginning. There was positivity. It seemed pretty good. It was then in the long term when maybe he was starting to try and fit players into positions that they didn't really work, and it got a bit too intense maybe. But in a short burst, he did what needed to be done to get Juventus 4th in the league, and they had a pretty decent run of it at the end of the season. So perhaps Tottenham have looked at that and thought, just get through this period.
Yeah.
And this is a manager that himself, he's got his own points to prove, so he kind of wouldn't mind knowing that this is his sample, and that it might
That's the positive of the situation with Igor, I suppose, is that he has got a track record of going into clubs in short spells and turning them around fairly quickly. You look at the spells that he had at Juventus and Lazio, and quite quickly he did get results. I know that he's moved from a lot of clubs in a very short space of time, but do you look at that as a positive aspect, that he has gone in and changed things quickly in certain clubs he's been at?
You got to. I mean, we didn't know much about him beforehand, and doing a little bit of digging, it seems like he has an initial impact when going in. I'll take you back to 2018, his Udinese spell, which I read about yesterday. He got in there and saved them from relegation in a very difficult position. What you just said about injecting energy into it, if he can do that at Spurs,
The only problem,
if he's motivated to do it as well,
is the injuries.
Well, that's what I was about to come to, is that it's going to be tricky for him.
And also, you mentioned earlier when you're talking about Frank, and particularly you mentioned that game at the Emirates where he set with 5 at the back, 2 screening midfielders. You can't do that in a North London derby. We look at how Tudor lines up. It's 3 at the back, wing backs. I can imagine it being 2 screening. So when Arsenal arrive next weekend, in what will be the first time you see this Tudor side, if he sets up 5 at the back, 2 screening midfielders. Like you said, you weren't happy with Frank for doing that. Is that an issue? A problem?
Well, less of an issue because he's only there for a short term.
Yeah.
I think right now it's about abandoning every principle you have.
Would you? It's got to go out the window.
We've got to stay. We've got to stay in the league. Yeah. I mean, now it occupies almost every waking minute of my day. The idea that Tottenham Hotspur could be relegated.
How realistic is it now? You think you could go down?
You know the answer to that, Joe. Of course, it's realistic. You would be foolish to ignore it, and I can't ignore it. You know, I'm talking about Spurs constantly on the podcast, and I'm listening to the glee that you've.
There's no glee here. There's no glee.
People wouldn't see this behind the curtain a little bit, but he is so happy. Happy.
Joe has been unbearable. You have been unbearable. You've only been with him for 10 minutes. Every week is unbearable since this little Man United run of form. Anyway,
but realistic, yeah.
We've given Flav a task anyway with that.
Yeah, we have, absolutely. We've spoken about the interim manager being Igor Tudor, but he is only here until June, so we want to talk about the permanent manager to follow him. So, Flav, we've asked you to put together a list of 5 top candidates. We're going to go in reverse order. Number 1 being the man you want to get the job on a permanent basis. So, at 5, who are you looking at?
I've got Oliver Glasner.
Okay.
Obviously, he's in this situation where he's going to be leaving Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
But if you think about the Palace side that he took over and what he managed to create and achieve in the FA Cup and the Community Shield wins, it's nothing short of remarkable. I've got a good friend of mine, Dan Cook, he's HLTCO on Twitter, and he's a massive Palace fan, and he described this Palace side as the best possible in its history, but certainly in his lifetime. And carrying on his credentials from his time at Frankfurt and Wolfsburg, I think there's a really good manager with the right setup in Oliver Glasner. However, I have reservations in the fact that he's fallen out with a few of his director of footballs and owners.
Do you have any concerns that it could be a similar situation to Thomas Frank at all, coming in with his style and how he would set up against sort of the better teams? And
I think he's been more. I think he's a bit more expansive than what Frank would ideally like to play. Well, certainly we did play at Tottenham Hotspur. What I sort of saw what they did in their run to the FA Cup final, I just thought they just looked sensational. When their players were fit, they were winning games, and they went 16 unbeaten this season. That's what people forget. And then they went 13 without a win. But they had massive injuries as well, and AFCON that decimated them. So I don't think there'd be many Spurs fans that would be clamouring for Oliver Glasner.
How do you think he would be received if he was given the job? How would he be received at the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? Not to great fanfare, but it's my opinion that he would be a good manager at Spurs. But yeah, I don't think he'd be a popular choice. But there'd be lots of managers actually available in the summer. Weirdly, the market's very good. But I think stick him up then.
Stick him up 5 then. So that's 5. Obviously, we're going in reverse order, culminating who you think should be the next permanent manager at 1. So let's come to 4 next. Interesting shout of 4, Flav. Talk me through this one.
Yeah. So this is my left field shout.
Okay.
Just to make it relatively interesting, this is obviously the Borough coach, Kim Hellberg. And his style of play is fascinating to me.
It is amazing to watch,
Incredible to watch. And I think without, playing down the quality that we have in our league, I think some games in the Premier League and the way football has moved it's less enjoyable than it has been in previous seasons. And you think of the really glory years of the Premier League, it was playing sort of similar brand of football to what Hellberg tries to do. And it's less about formations and it's less about positional play, and it's all about reacting to the game state, which enables players to be individuals again. So I think what we've missed from the Premier League is these mercurial characters that lit up the pitch and become superstars. And in his system, you'll see that. And I kind of long for seeing that brand of football at Tottenham.
How important do you think the style of play is for Spurs? Yeah, because
massive.
The managers we're going to come on to that is very varied in their style and their approach. And Frank was obviously quite pragmatic, quite defensive. Andrew's very attacking,
it's huge.
very open.
Yeah, it's huge.
What do you want to see as a Spurs fan from your manager?
I want to win. Obviously, I want to win, but we don't. We haven't, right? So you have to look for other things sometimes, and The irony of us beating you lot in the final in Europa League was that we had to play a style of football that was completely opposite of what the traditions are built on. But style of play is massive, and this man's football is incredible. And I would like to see a return to it. You could kind of compare it, and I have to be very careful here. But Wenger's Arsenal, the great version of Wenger's Arsenal, played a similar brand of football with superstars. And it should be encouraged, that brand of football. And I know set pieces have become so important, and it's a way of levelling the field, and Brentford are brilliant at it. But it would be better for everyone, I think, if we have this manager in the league.
I think it's a really good point as well, actually, because I know a lot of Spurs fans, myself, yourself, the brand of football is so important. And actually, we talk about pragmatic managers that you've mentioned, but I'm not going to reveal where we're coming on to, but I think a big part of what you're picking later in your list is the entertainment factor. You think of managers in the past that have been synonymous with the fan base, and there have been ones that have played an attacking brand of football that the fans have taken to. So I think it's a hugely important point, and I think we're going to see more of that as we come to your list.
Yeah.
Show us who you've got at 3 then.
Andoni Iraola of Bournemouth.
Nieve, could they? I think Andoni Iraola, obviously, is going to have huge options in the summer, isn't he? He's out of contract.
But sorry, Spurs is not a huge option.
No, I think it is, but on the continent as well, there's going to be massive clubs interested in Andoni Iraola. Maybe that's just my opinion.
Managing in the Premier League, he's not.
But I don't think it's a guarantee.
You don't think Spurs would be an attractive option for him?
I think for sure they would, but I don't think they'll be alone in wanting Iraola.
Right. Definitely not alone.
No, I agree with that.
No, but to be fair, it's still, if it's just all depends on the conversations they have, though, isn't it? And going into it, managing the expectations. It is a good point, because you've tried world-class managers, you've tried managers where it's maybe more of a project. I often wonder what those original conversations are with the managers to get them through the door, and then they suddenly feel so disappointed within the space of 6 months.
Yeah, well, I wonder that too. Like, what was promised to Conte? What Romero has come out and accused the club of not telling truths, and he signed a new contract recently. So I wonder what's been said as well. That said, the massive challenges that Iraola's faced at Bournemouth, losing his entire back line, Semenyo, Solanke just before he came in, I think, injuries as well, and he just keeps rebounding. And there was difficult periods in his first season when he started, when I was getting used to his style, and then in this season there was a difficult period as well, and they've rebounded again. They've lost Semenyo, and they still look okay, and that's down to his coaching and tactics. So this would be also a great appointment for Spurs, but like you say, there will be suitors for him. But regardless of where we are in the league, Spurs is a massive pull and a great opportunity. And if you get it right and turn the tide, then the world is your oyster.
Okay, let's stick him up. We were talking about the managerial merry-go-round in the summer. Obviously, Glasner out of contract, Iraola's out of contract. The next man you're bringing to the table, I mean, when I was talking about in-demand managers, could you convince this guy? It's Xabi Alonso. How do you convince him?
This is like a dream.
Okay.
Right, this is like, so I was asked to come up with 5, and I was thinking, Spurs are a massive football club, despite what people would like to say to the contrary.
You are, I agree.
To the contrary. And there is a massive opportunity at Spurs for someone like him to really create another string to his bow, which makes him one of the top managers in world football. My feeling here is if there was a world where this could happen, it would mean Arne Slot would have to turn it around at Liverpool, and he'd be waiting for a job in the interim. And I'm kind of, he's done such an incredible job at Leverkusen, getting more from his players than he should have done. Struggled at Real Madrid because they're a basket case football club with superstars and egos that have to be managed. But I think if Liverpool is off the table, which it probably isn't, and he's going to go there, then Spurs would be a great job for Xabi Alonso.
Nieve, can you see this happening?
Do you think that the team is set and ready for him, and ready for the style they want to play, where they want players playing?
I don't think our team is set for anybody, really. I think any manager coming has got to really imprint a new idea. There's talent in the squad, and when they're all fit, it's still, to me, a top 6 squad. But we've been kind of so rudderless and shifting from different ideas constantly. Conte's system, then we pivot completely to Postecoglou, which is a completely different idea and brand of football. And there was an idea that Langer came out, did an interview with the Evening Standard, and he said that we're building a philosophy and a culture at Tottenham that isn't dependent on who is managing the football club. We've got Postecoglou now, but the next manager will fit into that, and the next manager was Thomas Frank, who didn't fit into that. So there is tons that needs to be done that isn't just about appointing the right manager. It's about getting that director of football in that can create a culture for these players to thrive in.
Do you think you need to do that first before you try and aspire for that level of manager who's going to have his own? He's got his own very sort of specific blueprint, what he wants to do.
Yeah.
Could it be maybe more wise to have someone who's a little bit more pragmatic whilst you're actually figuring out what you want to do as a club?
Yeah, loads of work needs to be done, and it really shouldn't be the CEO in Vino Venkatesham choosing the next manager. It should be your director of football who creates an idea about the type of player you bring in, about the type of brand of football you want to play, and then appoints a manager accordingly. But a lot of work has to be done at Spurs.
OK, so that's number two. So now we come to the man that you want as the manager. I think you made some very interesting points here about the stylisation of different managers. You mentioned Conte, then we went to all-out attack under Ange, went to quite a pragmatic approach under Thomas Frank. So the styles have changed. Do you feel, and I'm looking at this magnet now, and I think I'd agree, and I think a lot of Spurs fans would, that the next permanent manager has to be one that gets the fans on side early? Is that a big part of why you've got this man in your hand?
Yes, so obviously it's Mauricio Pochettino.
His magic, you know.
Oh yes, I miss him. He's
and a lot of Spurs fans
trying to escape already.
Good. A lot of Spurs fans have mentioned his name. We've heard his name being chanted in the stands this season.
While Frank
so he
was
has
there.
that an affection, and also the way that he talks about Tottenham still in interviews. You think the amount of clubs that he's managed, the way that he talks about Tottenham, still saying on record that he wants to come back. This is a serious consideration for the summer, isn't it?
I think it's going to happen. I think I would argue even if it went down, he probably would even still potentially take it, given the way he talks about Spurs. He is a tap-in for the football club, and potentially solves the sporting director or director of football issue in that he would want a much more hands-on role, because that's what he had last time at Tottenham. So you might not need a director of football in that instance, but. Like you said, the next manager needs to be popular with the fans, because the previous appointments haven't necessarily been. And, there is an argument that you shouldn't go back.
Is that a factor here? Are you looking back on that time with rose-tinted glasses a little bit? When you think of the final few months of Poch, and obviously the investment wasn't there, we know that.
Yeah.
And what's happened since he's left and he's gone to manage Chelsea, a bitter rival of Tottenham. Is there an element of never go back there?
I don't think we really got a choice, have we, Joe? It's potentially.
Well, you do. You've got some great options here as well.
They're not as good as him.
Okay.
They're not as good as him. I think the people look back at his time at Chelsea and actually, I think they're a bit dismissive of the work that he did there. And towards the end, he won his last 5 games.
He was turning it around, wasn't he?
It was a mad club. He's got a bunch of kids that.
But when he went there was a lot of noise from the Tottenham fans that weren't happy he'd gone to Chelsea.
Of course.
I don't think that's an issue now, clearly by the fact that they chant his name in the stadium.
Yeah. No, he's popular.
So I think he's still got that affinity with Spurs fans. What do you think of Poch? Who would your choice be, Nieve, as next permanent Spurs manager?
I can totally understand the love for Poch to come back. I just think it's so important to remember the good times, but also why it came to an end, and is there danger of that being why it would come to an end again? Are you going to make sure that things that went wrong in the past and what he was unhappy with is fixed this time? Because otherwise, what's the point in him coming back? Do you see what I mean?
No, absolutely. The differences would be that Daniel Levy isn't there. You saw Postecoglou talking about the fact that we're not a big club because we don't pay big club wages. And one of the statements that Vino Venkatesham made in the programme before the West Ham game was that we are going to change the wage structure at the club. It's just talk. We don't know yet. But you have to hold him to his word at this point, because he hasn't had an opportunity to break the wage bracket and change the way we pay players. If you add funds to Pochettino's team, and bearing in mind he went two, he said our signings weren't there, but we went 2 windows without signing a single player.
I think that's really key as well. I think there's mitigating circumstances. When people say the end parts of Poch, you've got to bear in mind we're moving stadium. We had huge injuries. We didn't spend any money for 2 seasons. There's a lot of mitigating circumstances that he was navigating whilst that manager, and there's the affection there with the fans. But it's a fascinating conversation. He's heavily linked. Stick him up. Flav is your number one.
I do think the atmosphere in the ground, now you've got that new home, and it's finding that atmosphere and that love in the ground. To have someone who could help that, because I have noticed at Spurs ground sometimes there can be a bit of mixed feelings and it can be a bit hostile.
That's an understatement. Yeah,
So
it's been very toxic this year. Yeah,
Poch will turn it around.
That's what Flav. Yeah, that's what Flav thinks. Good list. Let us know what you think of that at home. There are the top 5 next permanent managers, and Poch is Flav's man. Let us know what you think of those selections at home.